Hello, dear friend. I'm the author of this channel. Have you ever thought about the following? The biggest financial mistake you will ever make is believing that money is about money. That single misunderstanding quietly steals years from people's lives. It convinces them to chase paychecks instead of skills. It convinces them to pursue comfort instead of value. It convinces them that wealth is hiding somewhere outside of them, waiting to be discovered like buried treasure. And because of that belief, millions of people spend decades running in circles. They work harder, they become busier, they become more exhausted. Yet somehow their financial life barely changes, not because they are lazy, not because they lack intelligence, not because the world is against them, but because they are playing the wrong game. And once you see what the real game is, you will never look at money the same way again. Welcome to this audiobook, The One Rule. Over the next chapters, we are going to explore a principle that quietly sits beneath almost every fortune ever created. A principle stronger than luck, stronger than connections, stronger than talent. A principle that works whether you live in a major city, a small town, whether you are 20 years old or 60 years old, whether you are starting with $10 or 10,000. This is educational content designed to help you think differently about wealth, opportunity, and personal growth. It is not financial advice, but it may become something even more valuable, a new lens through which you see your entire future. Because there is one question that determines more of your financial destiny than almost anything else. Not how much money do you make, not where do you live, not what degree do you have. The question is this: how valuable are you becoming? Most people never ask themselves that question. Instead, they ask, how can I make more money? And at first glance, that sounds reasonable. But the problem is that money is a result. Value is the cause. Money follows value the way a shadow follows a body. The shadow moves because the body moves, not the other way around. Yet countless people spend their lives chasing the shadow. Late at night, they sit in front of glowing screens, searching for shortcuts. The fastest investment, the secret opportunity, the hidden trick, the overnight success story. And every year, a new wave of promises appears. A new miracle, a new shortcut, a new fantasy. Most disappear as quickly as they arrived, because wealth rarely arrives through shortcuts. Wealth arrives through becoming someone who consistently creates value. That is the rule, the one rule. Become more valuable than you were yesterday. Do that long enough, and money begins looking for you, not the other way around. Think about the people who command extraordinary incomes: a world-class surgeon, an elite software architect, a founder who solves problems for millions, a creator whose ideas influence entire industries, a negotiator who closes complex deals, a strategist who sees opportunities others cannot see. They are not being paid for effort alone. They are being paid for value, for skills, for judgment, for solutions, for the ability to produce outcomes. The marketplace does not reward intentions. It rewards usefulness. And that realization can feel uncomfortable because it removes excuses. The moment you understand this, you can no longer blame luck for everything. You begin asking different questions. What problems can I solve? What skills can I develop? What knowledge can I acquire? What results can I create? How can I become difficult to replace? These questions change lives. Years ago, a young man sat alone in a small apartment after another disappointing month. His bills were paid, barely, His future felt uncertain. Every day looked almost identical. Wake up, work, return home, distract himself, sleep, repeat. He kept telling himself that one day things would improve. One day he would earn more. One day opportunity would arrive. One day life would change. Then one evening he asked himself a painful question. What if nothing changes? Not next year, not 5 years from now, not 10 years from now. What if this is simply the trajectory of my life? The question terrified him, but it also woke him up, because for the first time, he stopped focusing on income. He started focusing on value. He became obsessed with learning. He studied communication, psychology, technology, business, sales, problem solving. He invested hours that nobody saw, months that nobody applauded, years that nobody celebrated. And slowly, something happened. His opportunities expanded. His confidence expanded. His network expanded. His income expanded, not because money suddenly became interested in him, because he became more valuable, and value changed everything. That story is repeated thousands of times across the world every day. Not always dramatically, not always quickly, but consistently. The people who transform their financial lives usually transform themselves first. And that brings us to something most people misunderstand when they hear the phrase, "get rich fast." The mind immediately imagines speed, instant results, rapid success, immediate wealth. But there is another kind of fast, a different kind, the kind that appears slow at first, then suddenly looks explosive. Consider a tree. For a long time you see very little. Roots spread beneath the surface, invisible growth, silent development. Then one season arrives and growth seems almost sudden. People notice the tree. They assume it happened quickly. They never saw the roots. Wealth often works the same way. Years of invisible development, then visible acceleration. The world celebrates outcomes. It rarely notices preparation. The one rule is not about chasing money. It is about becoming the kind of person money naturally flows toward. Because value attracts opportunity. Value attracts trust. Value attracts relationships. Value attracts solutions. Value attracts income. And perhaps most importantly, value creates options. The ability to choose where you live, how you work, who you spend time with, what kind of future you build. Money alone does not create freedom. Value creates money. Money creates options. Options create freedom. That chain begins with value. If this idea resonates with you, take a moment sometime today and write down the most valuable skill you possess right now. Then ask yourself another question. What skill could I begin developing that would make me dramatically more valuable 3 years from now? Not tomorrow, not next week, 3 years. Because the answer to that question may quietly determine the direction of your future. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a month. They underestimate what they can accomplish in 3 years. The person who reads 1 hour each day. The person who studies after work. The person who practices while others consume entertainment. The person who develops expertise while others seek distraction. That person eventually becomes impossible to ignore. And when that moment arrives, outsiders often call it luck. But you and I will call it something else. We will call it accumulated value. And there is one specific reason why accumulated value grows far faster for some people than others. A reason hidden beneath ambition itself. A reason that explains why two equally hardworking people can experience completely different futures. Because effort alone is not the multiplier. There is another force, a force so powerful that once you understand it, the entire wealth equation begins to change. And that force is where our journey continues next. Hey there, we want to remind you that we often choose topics suggested by you, our viewers, in the comments. In the comments, you can suggest a topic or ask a question about what you'd like to see in our video. We read every comment carefully, so we promise not to miss a single one. Thank you. Let's keep going. Chapter 2. The Multiplier Nobody Can See. Hard work is respected because everyone can see it. Leverage is rewarded because few people understand it. That distinction explains why some people spend 40 years climbing, while others seem to accelerate past them in a fraction of the time. Not because they worked less, not because they cheated, not because they were chosen by fate, because they discovered a multiplier. And once a multiplier enters your life, effort begins producing results that effort alone could never create. This is where many people become confused about wealth. They believe income is simply connected to the number of hours they work. 1 hour equals 1 unit of progress. 10 hours equals 10 units of progress. 100 hours equals 100 units of progress. The equation feels logical. The problem is that reality rarely rewards people in a straight line. Reality rewards leverage. Think about a teacher standing in front of 20 students. The teacher shares knowledge once. 20 people receive it. That is leverage. Think about an author writing a book. Years later, thousands of people may still read those words. That is leverage. Think about a software developer creating a tool. The tool works while the creator sleeps. That is leverage. Think about a business owner who builds systems capable of serving customers around the clock. That is leverage. Leverage allows one action to create many results. And the moment you understand that principle, your relationship with time begins to change. Because time is limited. No matter how ambitious you are, your day still contains 24 hours. You cannot negotiate for more. You cannot purchase extra decades. You cannot borrow additional mornings. Time remains the ultimate constraint. That is why the wealthiest people on earth are not necessarily those who work the hardest. They are often the people who learned how to make each hour reach farther. The person relying only on effort is carrying water bucket by bucket. The person using leverage is building a pipeline. Both may be working, but one is multiplying. The other is merely repeating. Years ago, a woman working a demanding corporate job found herself trapped in a cycle that felt impossible to escape. She earned a respectable salary. Her calendar was full. Her days were exhausting. Yet every financial goal seemed permanently out of reach. Whenever she wanted more income, there was only one solution: work more, take on another project, accept more responsibilities, sacrifice more time. And eventually, she realized something troubling. She had accidentally built a life where every increase required more of her existence. More hours, more energy, more stress, more sacrifice. She wasn't building freedom. She was renting survival. That realization changed her thinking. Instead of asking how she could work more, she asked how she could create something that worked beyond her direct effort. At first, the progress seemed insignificant. A side project, a digital product, small improvements, tiny experiments, nothing glamorous, nothing dramatic. Yet those small efforts contained leverage, and leverage behaves differently than labor. Labor produces immediate results. Leverage produces delayed acceleration. Months passed, then years. What began as a small experiment eventually generated opportunities she never imagined, not because she worked every waking moment, because she built systems capable of working beyond her presence. This is one of the hardest truths for ambitious people to accept. More effort is not always the answer. Sometimes the answer is better design, better systems, better positioning, better leverage. A person can spend years running faster on a treadmill. Another person spends those same years building a vehicle. The first person becomes exhausted. The second person becomes mobile. The difference is not determination, it is direction. And direction matters more than most people realize. One of the reasons people stay financially stuck is because they unconsciously sell all of their value one day at a time. Every morning, they exchange hours for income. Every evening, the transaction ends. The next day begins from zero, again and again. There is dignity in work. There is nothing wrong with earning money through effort. The danger appears when effort becomes the only strategy, because effort alone has limits. Leverage expands limits. In today's world, leverage appears everywhere. Knowledge is leverage. Technology is leverage. Communication is leverage. Networks are leverage. Reputation is leverage. Trust is leverage. Even attention can become leverage when directed toward something valuable. The modern economy rewards people who understand this. A single useful idea can reach millions. A skill can travel across continents. A product can serve people you will never meet. Opportunities now move faster than ever before, yet many people remain trapped because they continue approaching the future with an outdated model. They ask how hard they must work. A more powerful question is this: how far can this effort travel? Can it help one person, 10 people, 1,000? Can it continue producing value tomorrow, next month, next year? Questions like these shift your perspective, and perspective changes decisions. There is another important lesson hidden here. Leverage without value is fragile. Value without leverage grows slowly. But value combined with leverage becomes extraordinarily powerful. Imagine a talented musician who performs only in small local venues. The talent exists, the value exists, but the reach remains limited. Now imagine that same musician sharing their work through platforms capable of reaching people worldwide. The talent did not change, the leverage did. Suddenly, the same skill produces dramatically different outcomes. This principle appears in nearly every field. The lawyer who builds educational resources, the consultant who develops systems, the teacher who creates courses, the entrepreneur who creates scalable solutions, the artist who builds a global audience, the programmer who builds useful tools. They are all using the same fundamental principle: create value, multiply reach, allow leverage to work. Now, before we continue, there is something important to understand. Leverage is not magic. It does not eliminate effort. It magnifies effort. The person who refuses to learn, improve, adapt, or contribute meaningful value cannot simply discover leverage and become wealthy. The foundation remains the same. Become valuable. Then multiply that value. That is the sequence, not the reverse. If you're listening right now, I want you to consider something. What are you doing today that stops producing results the moment you stop doing it? And what could you begin building that continues creating value beyond your direct involvement? You don't need the perfect answer tonight. You simply need the question, because questions reshape awareness, and awareness changes futures. Some listeners may discover leverage through business. others through investing, others through technology, others through creative work, others through leadership. The path is different for everyone. The principle remains the same. The wealthiest outcomes often emerge when value meets multiplication. And yet, even people who understand leverage often remain stuck. Not because they lack opportunity, because they are trapped by something much deeper, something invisible, something emotional, a force capable of destroying wealth before it is ever created. Fear. Not fear of failure, a more dangerous fear, the fear of becoming visible, the fear of being judged, the fear of outgrowing familiar environments, the fear of becoming different from the people around you. And until that fear is understood, even the most powerful strategies can remain trapped inside potential, because wealth is rarely stopped by a lack of information. More often, it is stopped by a hidden psychological ceiling. And that ceiling is where our next chapter begins. Chapter 3. The Invisible Ceiling. A strange thing happens when people begin moving toward a bigger future. They don't always feel excited. Sometimes they feel uncomfortable. Sometimes they feel guilty. Sometimes they feel afraid. And sometimes they sabotage themselves without realizing it. Not because they don't want success, because success threatens the identity they have carried for years. This is one of the least discussed truths about wealth. Money problems are often visible. Identity problems are hidden. And hidden problems are usually the ones that control outcomes. Think about a thermostat inside a house. You can open windows. You can bring in heaters. You can temporarily change the temperature. But eventually, the thermostat pulls everything back toward its preset level. Many people live with a financial thermostat inside their minds. An invisible standard, a hidden expectation, a subconscious belief about what they deserve, what they can earn, what kind of life belongs to them. And whenever they begin moving beyond that level, discomfort appears. Not because something is wrong, because they are entering unfamiliar territory. The mind often prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility. That sentence alone explains countless lives. Familiar pain feels predictable. You know how it works. You know the rules. You know the disappointment. You know the struggle. You know the limitations. Strange as it sounds, certainty can become addictive. Even when certainty is making you miserable, possibility feels different. Possibility introduces uncertainty. Growth introduces uncertainty. Change introduces uncertainty. And uncertainty activates fear. This is why some people stay trapped in jobs they hate for years, not because they enjoy them, because the misery is familiar. The paycheck is familiar. The routine is familiar. The identity is familiar. Leaving would require becoming someone new. And becoming someone new is one of the most emotionally challenging experiences a person can face. There was a man who spent nearly 2 decades believing wealthy people were fundamentally different from him. Not smarter, not better, different. Almost like they belonged to another species. Whenever he encountered success, he admired it from a distance. He respected it. He envied it. But he never truly believed it could belong to him. His language revealed everything. People like me don't become wealthy. People from my background don't do things like that. That's for other people. That's not my world. At first, those phrases sounded harmless, but they were constructing invisible walls. Every sentence reinforced an identity. Every belief strengthened the ceiling. And ceilings become prisons when left unchallenged. One day, he attended a small business event. Nothing extraordinary. A simple gathering, conversations, coffee, networking. But something happened that altered his perspective forever. He spent several hours speaking with successful people, not celebrities, not billionaires, just ordinary individuals who had built meaningful lives. And gradually, he noticed something surprising. They weren't different. They had fears, doubts, mistakes, failures, embarrassing stories, moments of uncertainty, moments of confusion, moments when they nearly quit. The difference wasn't perfection. The difference was belief. At some point, they stopped viewing success as something that happened to other people. They began viewing it as something they could build. That realization shattered a ceiling, and once a ceiling breaks, a new world becomes visible. Many listeners need to hear this. You are not as far away from your next level as you think. Often, the distance is psychological before it is practical. The first barrier is rarely opportunity. It is permission. Permission you have not yet given yourself. Permission to think bigger. Permission to learn. Permission to fail. Permission to improve. Permission to become someone new. The wealthiest transformation often begins with a simple decision. I am no longer defining my future by my past. That sounds simple. It is not easy, because the past carries emotional weight. Old disappointments, old mistakes, old failures, old criticism, old labels. Many people are still living inside stories written years ago. A teacher told them they weren't exceptional. A parent told them to lower expectations. A friend mocked their ambitions. A failed business damaged their confidence. A rejection altered their identity. And without noticing, they turned temporary experiences into permanent conclusions. The event ended. The story remained. But stories can be rewritten, not by pretending the past never happened, by refusing to let it dictate the future. One of the most dangerous beliefs in the world is this: this is just who I am. When used carelessly, that phrase becomes a cage. I'm bad with money. I'm not entrepreneurial. I'm not confident. I'm not disciplined. I'm not a leader. I'm not creative. I'm not the type of person who succeeds. Notice what happens. A temporary condition becomes a permanent identity. And identities are powerful because people work hard to remain consistent with who they believe they are. A person who believes they are unhealthy often acts differently than someone who believes they are becoming healthy. A person who believes they are financially careless acts differently than someone who believes they are learning financial mastery. The identity changes the behavior. The behavior changes the outcome. The outcome reinforces the identity, and the cycle continues. This is why changing your self-image is not motivational fluff. It is strategic. Because every major external transformation begins internally. The wealth you build tomorrow is influenced by the person you believe you are today. Years from now, your bank account will not simply reflect your income. It will reflect your habits, your decisions, your mindset, your skills, your standards, your identity. Everything traces back to who you become. That is why the one rule is not really about money. It is about transformation. Money is often the visible result. Transformation is the invisible cause, and transformation requires courage, not dramatic courage, quiet courage, the courage to continue learning when nobody notices, the courage to start before feeling ready, the courage to outgrow old environments, the courage to disappoint people who benefit from your limitations, the courage to become unfamiliar to yourself. Because growth feels strange at first. The first time you invest in yourself. The first time you charge more for your work. The first time you speak with confidence. The first time you enter a room that intimidates you. The first time you think beyond survival. Everything feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is not evidence that you are wrong. It is often evidence that you are expanding. A butterfly does not emerge comfortably. A seed does not become a tree comfortably. Transformation is naturally disruptive, and the people who create extraordinary lives learn to tolerate that discomfort long enough for growth to occur. If this chapter resonates with you, take a moment and ask yourself a difficult question. What belief about yourself has quietly limited your life? Not a circumstance, not an obstacle, a belief. What story have you been carrying? And what would happen if you stopped carrying it? Sometimes a single question can unlock years of progress, because once the ceiling becomes visible, it can no longer control you in the same way. But there is another challenge waiting beyond the ceiling, a challenge that destroys potential even among talented, intelligent, capable people. A challenge responsible for more unrealized wealth than almost any other factor. Distraction. Not occasional distraction, constant distraction. The modern epidemic, the silent thief of opportunity. And understanding its true cost may change the way you spend every future day. That is where we continue next. We'd also like to remind you that we have a private members community on our channel. All members can vote on the topic of the next video, have priority in the comment section, and most importantly, gain access to exclusive videos and lessons covering the most relevant topics and information specific to this month. Thank you. Let's keep moving forward. Chapter 4. The Cost of Distraction. The tragedy is not that most people fail. The tragedy is that many never discover what they were truly capable of becoming. Not because they lacked talent, not because they lacked intelligence, not because they lacked opportunity, because their attention was stolen, a day at a time, an hour at a time, a minute at a time, until years disappeared. Attention is the currency beneath every other currency. Before money can grow, attention must be directed. Before skills can develop, attention must be sustained. Before businesses can be built, attention must be invested. Before relationships can deepen, attention must be present. Everything valuable begins with attention. And yet, we are living in an era where attention is under constant attack. Never before in human history have so many people competed for your focus. Every notification, every advertisement, every endless feed, every algorithm, every headline, every distraction. Someone is always trying to capture your mind, because the people who control attention often control outcomes. Think about it. A person spends 8 hours working, 3 hours scrolling, 2 hours consuming random content, several more hours worrying about things they cannot control. Then they wonder why their future remains unchanged. The answer is not hidden. Attention was invested elsewhere. A river flows wherever it is directed. So does a life. There was a young programmer who dreamed of creating something meaningful. He was talented, curious, capable. Every year he created plans. Every year he bought courses. Every year he outlined projects. Every year he promised himself this would be the year. And every year the same thing happened. Tiny distractions accumulated, nothing dramatic. A video here, an endless scroll there, a little procrastination, a little entertainment, a little delay. Each individual decision seemed harmless. but together they created a pattern, and patterns become destinies. One evening, he calculated something that disturbed him. He estimated the amount of time he had spent consuming content compared to creating content. The number shocked him. Years, not months, years. Years spent watching other people build lives while postponing his own. That realization changed him. Not overnight. Transformation rarely works that way, but gradually, intentionally. He became protective of his attention, and that decision altered everything, because attention compounds. Just like money, most people understand financial compound interest. A small amount invested consistently grows into something substantial. Attention follows a similar principle. One focused hour today seems insignificant. One focused hour tomorrow seems insignificant. One focused hour next week seems insignificant. Yet years later, those hours become expertise, opportunity, confidence, mastery, income, a different life. The problem is that distraction compounds too. 1 hour lost feels harmless. One evening, wasted feels harmless. 1 week, drifting feels harmless. Until decades reveal the accumulated cost. This is why wealthy thinkers guard their attention so fiercely. Not because they dislike entertainment, not because they avoid rest, because they understand something important. Whatever consistently captures your attention eventually shapes your future. The books you read, the conversations you have, the skills you practice, the ideas you study, the people you learn from. All of these become part of your thinking, and your thinking becomes your decisions. Your decisions become your outcomes. The chain is always operating, whether you notice it or not. Imagine two people beginning from identical circumstances, same city, same age, same resources, same opportunities. One spends 5 years intentionally developing valuable skills, reading, practicing, building, learning. The other spends 5 years consuming whatever happens to appear in front of them, reacting, scrolling, complaining, drifting. After 5 years, the difference appears dramatic. But the divergence did not occur suddenly. It occurred daily, quietly, almost invisibly. Attention created the gap. One of the greatest misconceptions about success is that it requires extraordinary effort every day. In reality, it often requires extraordinary consistency, the ability to repeatedly focus on what matters while others repeatedly surrender attention to what does not. This sounds simple. It is not. Because distraction often disguises itself as productivity. You can spend an entire day feeling busy while accomplishing almost nothing important. Answering messages, checking updates, consuming information, jumping between tasks, remaining active without remaining effective. Activity and progress are not the same thing. Movement and advancement are not the same thing. Being occupied and being productive are not the same thing. This distinction changes lives. A person can remain incredibly busy while staying exactly where they are. Meanwhile, another person quietly focuses on a handful of meaningful activities and transforms their future. The difference is not effort. It is focus. Years ago, an investor was asked what separated successful people from unsuccessful people. His answer surprised many listeners. He said that the difference often came down to what people were willing to ignore, not merely what they pursued, what they ignored. Because every meaningful goal requires sacrifice. Not always dramatic sacrifice, but consistent sacrifice. Every yes requires a no. Every priority requires an exclusion. Every major achievement requires attention to be concentrated somewhere specific. That means choosing. Choosing what deserves your energy, choosing what deserves your time, choosing what deserves your focus. The inability to choose creates a scattered life, and scattered lives rarely create extraordinary outcomes. The modern world celebrates accessibility. Everything is available, every idea, every opportunity, every form of entertainment, every distraction. Yet abundance creates a hidden challenge. When everything is available, discipline becomes more valuable than ever. Because success is not determined by access alone. It is determined by selection. What will you focus on? What will you ignore? What deserves your finite attention? These questions matter more today than perhaps at any other point in history, because information is no longer scarce. Focus is scarce. Knowledge is available everywhere. Concentration is rare. Opportunities are abundant. Sustained attention is uncommon, and rarity creates value. The person capable of focusing deeply in a distracted world gains a remarkable advantage, not because they know more, because they apply more. Application separates consumers from creators. Consumers absorb, creators produce, consumers watch, creators build, consumers observe possibilities, creators pursue possibilities. The wealthiest outcomes usually belong to those who spent more time creating than consuming. That does not mean avoiding learning. Learning is essential, but learning without action becomes another form of entertainment. A person can spend years studying wealth without building any, studying productivity without becoming productive, studying confidence without becoming confident. Eventually, knowledge must become action, otherwise it remains potential. And potential alone never changes a life. If this message resonates with you, consider sharing in the comments one distraction you know has stolen more time from your life than it deserved. Not to feel guilty, not to judge yourself, simply to become aware. Awareness creates choice, and choice creates change. The future belongs to those who consciously direct their attention rather than surrendering it. Yet even focus is not enough, because once a person develops value, leverage, and focus, another challenge appears. Perhaps the most emotionally difficult challenge of all: patience. The ability to continue when results remain invisible. The ability to trust growth before evidence appears. The ability to stay committed while others quit, because wealth often grows slowly before it grows quickly. And understanding that pattern may save you from abandoning your future just before it begins to bloom. That is where our next chapter begins. Chapter 5. The Season of Invisible Growth. The hardest part of building wealth is not learning. It is not working. It is not even sacrificing. The hardest part is continuing when there is no visible proof that your efforts are working. Because human beings naturally crave evidence. We want confirmation. We want signs. We want reassurance that the time, energy, and discipline we are investing today will produce something meaningful tomorrow. But life rarely operates on that schedule. The most important transformations happen underground before they become visible above ground, and if you do not understand this, you may quit during the exact season when progress is quietly taking root. A farmer does not plant seeds in the morning and dig them up every evening to check their progress. Imagine how absurd that would be. Yet that is exactly what many people do with their goals. They start learning a new skill. A few weeks later, they become discouraged. They begin a business. A few months later, they lose faith. They invest in themselves. A short time later, they conclude nothing is happening. The seed never receives enough time to become a tree. Patience is not passive. Patience is active faith. It is continuing to do the right things long before visible rewards appear. This principle separates builders from dreamers. Dreamers become excited by possibilities. Builders become committed to processes. Dreamers fall in love with outcomes. Builders fall in love with growth. And growth rarely announces itself. It whispers, quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. There was a woman who spent nearly 3 years developing expertise in a field that very few people around her understood. Friends questioned her. Family members wondered why she invested so much time. Some people suggested she was wasting her energy. After all, there were no dramatic results, no headlines, no sudden success, no obvious breakthrough. From the outside, her efforts appeared ordinary. Yet every day she continued, reading, practicing, improving, learning, refining. While others searched for shortcuts, she focused on mastery. Then one year, everything changed. Not because she suddenly became talented, not because luck finally arrived, because 3 years of invisible growth became visible. The opportunities that followed looked sudden, but they were not sudden. They were accumulated. Most breakthroughs are accumulated. People see the harvest. They rarely see the seasons that produced it. This misunderstanding creates unrealistic expectations, and unrealistic expectations destroy persistence. A person starts exercising for 2 weeks and expects a transformation. A person studies a skill for 30 days and expects mastery. A person launches a project and expects immediate success. When reality fails to match fantasy, discouragement appears. Then abandonment follows. The opportunity was not lost because the goal was impossible. The opportunity was lost because the timeline was misunderstood. Everything valuable takes longer than people expect. Not forever, just longer. A tree grows slower than a weed, yet nobody builds furniture from weeds. Depth requires time. Strength requires time. Reputation requires time. Trust requires time. Wealth requires time. And once you accept that reality, something liberating happens. You stop obsessing over speed. You start focusing on direction. Direction matters more than speed. A person moving slowly toward a meaningful destination will eventually arrive. A person moving quickly in the wrong direction simply becomes lost faster. Think about how many people spend years chasing urgency. Everything must happen now. Results must arrive immediately. Progress must be visible instantly. But urgency and importance are not always the same thing. Some of the most important decisions you will ever make produce no immediate reward. Reading a book, learning a skill, improving communication, developing discipline, building relationships, expanding your thinking. These activities often feel slow, yet they create extraordinary futures. The challenge is that they compete against activities that provide instant gratification. Instant gratification is seductive because it delivers immediate emotional rewards. A notification, a purchase, entertainment, validation, dopamine. The feeling arrives instantly. The cost arrives later. Growth operates in reverse. The effort arrives instantly. The reward arrives later. That is why discipline feels difficult. You pay first, you benefit later. Distraction feels easy because the benefit comes first. The cost arrives later. Understanding this distinction can transform your life. Every day, you are choosing between immediate comfort and delayed rewards. Not once, repeatedly. Tiny decisions, small moments, Simple choices, each one seems insignificant. Together, they create destinies. Imagine two people beginning today. The first chooses comfort whenever possible. The second chooses growth whenever reasonable. Neither decision feels dramatic. Not today, not tomorrow. Perhaps not even next month. But after 5 years, the gap becomes impossible to ignore. The difference was never one giant decision. It was thousands of small decisions compounded over time. This is why patience and discipline are partners. Patience without discipline becomes waiting. Discipline without patience becomes frustration. Together, they create momentum. Momentum is powerful because it changes your relationship with effort. At first, discipline feels difficult. Then discipline becomes normal. Eventually, discipline becomes identity. And when that happens, progress accelerates. People often ask why some individuals seem unstoppable. The answer is rarely motivation. Motivation comes and goes. The answer is momentum. Momentum reduces resistance. Momentum builds confidence. Momentum creates evidence. Momentum reminds you that progress is possible. The first dollar saved feels small. The first 100 feels encouraging. The first 1,000 feels meaningful. Then something interesting happens. You stop focusing on the amount. You begin focusing on the habit. The habit becomes more valuable than the result. Because habits create results repeatedly. Anyone can experience a lucky moment. Very few people build systems that consistently produce positive outcomes. The one rule has never been about chasing outcomes. It has always been about becoming the kind of person capable of creating outcomes repeatedly. That distinction changes everything. A person who becomes valuable can create value again. A person who develops discipline can apply discipline again. A person who learns how to solve problems can solve new problems again. Skills remain. Character remains. Identity remains. That is real wealth. Money can disappear. Skills travel with you. Opportunities can change. Knowledge travels with you. Markets rise and fall. Character travels with you. This is why investing in yourself remains one of the highest return investments available. No market crash can erase genuine wisdom. No recession can eliminate developed skills. No setback can permanently remove experience. The person you become is an asset, and unlike most assets, it appreciates when maintained properly. If you're listening right now during a difficult season, I want you to hear something carefully. Not every season is designed for harvesting. Some seasons are designed for planting. Some seasons are designed for learning. Some seasons are designed for preparation. Some seasons are designed for strengthening roots. Do not judge your entire future by a temporary season. A winter does not mean spring is canceled. It simply means growth is occurring in a different form. Continue, learn, improve, adapt. Trust the process long enough to give it a chance. Because one day, you may look back and realize that what felt like stagnation was actually preparation. And preparation often disguises itself as frustration until the breakthrough finally arrives. But there is another lesson waiting beyond patience. A lesson that explains why some people create extraordinary opportunities while others spend their lives waiting for opportunities to appear. The difference is not luck. The difference is initiative. Because the wealthy rarely spend their lives waiting to be chosen. They learn how to choose themselves. And that changes the entire game. Chapter 6. The day you stop waiting. One of the most expensive habits in the world is waiting. waiting for confidence, waiting for certainty, waiting for permission, waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting for the right moment, waiting for life to somehow become easier before finally becoming serious about your future. Years disappear inside that habit. Not because people are lazy, because waiting feels responsible. It feels safe. It feels intelligent. After all, who wants to make mistakes? Who wants to take risks? Who wants to step into uncertainty? The problem is that life rarely rewards waiting. Life rewards movement, not reckless movement, not impulsive movement, intentional movement. There is a hidden truth that successful people discover sooner than others. Clarity rarely arrives before action. Clarity arrives because of action. Most people reverse the sequence. They believe they must first know exactly what to do. Then they will begin. But the people who build extraordinary lives often begin before they have complete answers. They learn while moving. They adapt while progressing. They improve while executing. The path becomes visible because they started walking. Imagine standing at the edge of a dark road at night. You can only see a short distance ahead. The headlights illuminate perhaps a few hundred feet. Not the entire journey, not every turn, not every challenge. Yet you can still reach your destination. Why? Because each mile reveals the next. Life works the same way. You do not need visibility for the entire road. You need enough visibility for the next step. There was a young entrepreneur who spent years studying business. He read countless books, listened to hundreds of podcasts, attended seminars, consumed information constantly. From the outside, he appeared committed, dedicated, driven. But there was one problem. He never started. Every idea needed more research. Every plan needed more refinement. Every opportunity required additional preparation. He convinced himself he was being careful. In reality, he was hiding inside preparation. One day, a mentor asked him a question he could not ignore. "What are you afraid will happen if you begin?" The answer surprised him. Failure, embarrassment, judgment, mistakes, the possibility of looking foolish. Suddenly, he understood something important. His problem was not lack of knowledge. His problem was fear disguised as preparation. That realization changed everything. He launched. It was imperfect, messy, uncomfortable. The first version was far from ideal, but it was real, and reality became his greatest teacher. Within months, he learned more through action than he had learned through years of observation. Because experience compresses knowledge into wisdom. Many listeners are closer to opportunity than they realize. The challenge is not information. The challenge is initiation, the willingness to begin, the willingness to make mistakes, the willingness to be a beginner again. Children learn rapidly because they are not obsessed with protecting their image. They fall, they fail, they try again. Adults often become trapped because they fear appearing inexperienced. They want mastery immediately. They want competence instantly. They want certainty before effort. But mastery demands humility. Humility says, "I will learn, I will improve, I will grow. I do not need to be perfect to begin." That mindset creates momentum, and momentum creates opportunities. One of the biggest misconceptions about wealthy people is that they possess unusual certainty. In reality, many successful individuals spend large portions of their lives operating amid uncertainty. They simply become comfortable moving forward anyway. They understand something powerful. Waiting for certainty often means waiting forever. Every meaningful decision contains uncertainty. Starting a business, changing careers, learning new skills, making investments, building relationships, pursuing dreams. None come with guarantees. Life offers probabilities, not promises. The people who move ahead are not those who eliminate uncertainty. They are those who develop the courage to act despite uncertainty. That courage becomes a competitive advantage because hesitation is expensive. Opportunities have expiration dates. Markets change, technology evolves. Industries shift, windows open and close. The person who waits indefinitely often discovers that the opportunity they were preparing for no longer exists. Meanwhile, someone less prepared but more decisive moved first. This does not mean acting recklessly. It means understanding the difference between thoughtful preparation and endless delay. Thoughtful preparation creates readiness. Endless delay creates regret. And regret is heavier than failure. Failure teaches. Regret haunts. Years from now, most people will not be troubled by every mistake they made. They will be troubled by the attempts they never made, the conversations they never had, the skills they never learned, the opportunities they never explored, the dreams they abandoned before giving them a chance. There is a quote worth remembering. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. The same applies to action. The discomfort of beginning is temporary. The discomfort of wondering what if can last decades. Perhaps there is something you already know you should start, a skill, a project, a business, an investment in yourself, a difficult conversation, a new chapter. You have been thinking about it for months, maybe years. The idea returns repeatedly, quietly, persistently, almost like a visitor refusing to leave. Pay attention to that. Sometimes recurring ideas are invitations, not guarantees. Invitations. Life asking whether you are willing to grow, whether you are willing to expand, whether you are willing to become more than your current circumstances. Growth often begins with a simple decision, not a dramatic transformation, a decision, a commitment, a first step. The first step is rarely impressive. It usually feels small, ordinary, unremarkable. But first steps possess a hidden power. They create movement, and movement changes possibilities. Think about every successful person you admire, every author, every entrepreneur, every investor, every creator, every leader. There was a first step, a first sale, a first customer, a first attempt, a first rejection, a first failure, a first lesson. Nobody begins at chapter 20. Everyone begins at chapter 1. The difference is that some people stay there forever in their imagination, while others enter reality and begin writing the story. And there is something else worth understanding. The marketplace rewards initiative because initiative is rare. Most people notice problems. Few people solve them. Most people recognize opportunities. Few people pursue them. Most people discuss possibilities. Few people execute. Execution creates separation, not intelligence alone, not talent alone. Execution. A decent plan executed consistently will outperform a perfect plan that remains trapped in someone's notebook. This is why action has extraordinary value. Action creates feedback. Feedback creates improvement. Improvement creates competence. Competence creates confidence. Confidence creates larger action. And the cycle continues. Many people mistakenly believe confidence comes first. It rarely does. Confidence is usually earned, built, accumulated through repeated action. The person who appears confident today may simply have survived enough uncertainty yesterday. That realization should encourage you. You do not need complete confidence. You need enough courage to begin. The confidence will follow. If this message connects with you, write down one thing you have been postponing that you know would improve your future. Do not write 10 things. Write one. Then ask yourself a simple question. What is the smallest meaningful action I can take within the next 24 hours? Not next year, not next month. 24 hours. Because futures are not built through someday. They are built through today. And yet even people who take action often encounter a surprising challenge. Success begins to arrive. Progress appears. Income grows. Opportunities expand. And suddenly, a new danger emerges. A danger that quietly destroys fortunes, careers, and dreams. Ego, not failure, success. Because for many people, the greatest threat to growth arrives after they start winning, and understanding that lesson may save you from losing everything you worked so hard to build. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 7. The Trap Hidden Inside Success. Failure teaches lessons loudly. Success teaches lessons quietly. That is why failure often improves people, while success sometimes destroys them. The world assumes that the greatest danger comes before achievement. The struggle, the rejection, the uncertainty, the obstacles. But many people discover a surprising truth after they begin succeeding. The challenge changes, the game changes, the enemy changes. At first, you are fighting doubt. Later, you are fighting ego. And ego is far more difficult to recognize because it often disguises itself as confidence. There is nothing wrong with being proud of progress. You should be. There is nothing wrong with celebrating growth. You should. The danger begins when success convinces you that you no longer need to learn. The moment curiosity dies, growth begins to die with it. Every major collapse follows a similar pattern. Someone starts hungry, they study, they adapt, they listen, they improve, success arrives. Then slowly, almost invisibly, humility disappears. Questions become assumptions. Learning becomes certainty. Adaptation becomes rigidity. The very behaviors that created success are abandoned because success creates the illusion that they are no longer necessary. History is full of examples. Companies that dominated industries and believed they could never be challenged. Athletes who stopped training with the same intensity. Investors who became reckless after a series of wins. Leaders who stopped listening. Creators who stopped evolving. The downfall rarely begins with weakness. It begins with overconfidence. That is why the most dangerous sentence in business, investing, leadership, and personal growth is often this: I already know. Knowledge creates opportunities. The belief that you know everything destroys them. There was an entrepreneur who built a highly successful company before reaching 40 years old. The business grew rapidly. Revenue expanded. Recognition followed. People admired him. Interviews appeared. Awards arrived. For a while, everything seemed perfect. Then something subtle happened. He stopped listening. Feedback felt unnecessary. Advice felt irrelevant. Learning felt optional. After all, he had already succeeded. Why continue questioning himself? Years later, his company began losing ground. Competitors adapted faster. Markets evolved. Customer expectations shifted. He remained attached to old assumptions. By the time he recognized the problem, the advantage had disappeared. His greatest weakness had not been failure. It had been success. Success convinced him he no longer needed the behaviors that created success. That lesson applies to every area of life. The person who improves financially and stops learning about money eventually loses their edge. The person who becomes healthy and stops respecting health habits often declines. The person who develops valuable skills and stops developing eventually becomes outdated. Growth is not a destination. Growth is maintenance. The moment you stop growing, you begin drifting. The modern world moves too quickly for complacency. Technology changes, industries evolve, consumer behavior shifts, opportunities emerge and disappear. The people who thrive long-term remain students, always learning, always adapting, always curious. Not because they are insecure, because they understand reality. Reality rewards relevance, and relevance requires continuous evolution. One of the most powerful traits among highly successful individuals is intellectual humility. The willingness to say, I may be wrong. There may be something I don't see. There may be a better approach. There may be a lesson here. Those sentences create growth. Arrogance closes doors. Humility opens them. Now, there is another form of ego that quietly damages financial futures. Comparison. Not the comparison that inspires, the comparison that consumes. A person starts making progress. Income improves, skills improve, life improves. Then they begin measuring themselves against everyone else. Someone else earns more. Someone else owns more. Someone else appears further ahead. Suddenly, gratitude disappears. Progress feels insignificant. Joy fades. Comparison steals satisfaction. And when satisfaction disappears, people often begin making poor decisions. They spend money to impress people. They chase status instead of value. They buy symbols instead of assets. They pursue appearances instead of freedom. The marketplace profits enormously from insecurity. Entire industries depend on convincing people that they are incomplete, that they need one more purchase, one more upgrade, one more display of status. Yet many wealthy people eventually discover a surprising truth. Freedom feels better than impressing strangers. Options feel better than appearances. Peace feels better than validation. A luxury car can create attention. Financial independence creates choices. Attention fades quickly. Choices remain valuable. The people who build lasting wealth often think differently about money. They view money as a tool, not a trophy. A tool for creating freedom. A tool for creating opportunities. A tool for creating impact. A tool for reducing unnecessary stress. Tools solve problems. Trophies create displays. This distinction matters because whenever money becomes primarily about status, financial decisions become emotional, and emotional decisions often become expensive. One investor explained it beautifully. He said that wealth is what you do not see. The expensive lifestyle may be visible. The real wealth often remains hidden. The investments, the ownership, the cash reserves, the assets, the options. These things rarely attract attention, yet they create genuine security. Many people spend their entire lives looking wealthy. Far fewer spend their lives becoming wealthy. The difference is profound. Looking wealthy often requires spending. Becoming wealthy often requires patience. One seeks approval, the other seeks freedom, and freedom is always worth more. As your income grows, your lifestyle will constantly attempt to expand with it. This is natural. Human beings adapt quickly. What once felt luxurious eventually feels normal. What once felt exciting eventually feels expected. Psychologists call this adaptation. Success without awareness can create a trap. Income rises, expenses rise, expectations rise, stress remains. The person earns more than ever, but feels no more secure than before. Because every increase was consumed, nothing was retained, nothing was invested, nothing was allowed to compound. This is why discipline remains essential at every level of success. Not just at the beginning, throughout the journey. A person who cannot manage $10,000 will struggle to manage $100,000. A person who cannot manage $100,000 may struggle with $1 million. More money magnifies habits. It does not automatically improve them. That is why character remains more important than income. Income creates opportunity. Character determines what happens next. The one rule has never changed. Become more valuable, stay valuable, continue growing, remain teachable, remain adaptable, remain humble. Because the moment you believe growth is complete, growth usually stops. If this chapter resonates with you, consider this question. What success in your life are you most grateful for? And what lesson helped create it? Hold on to that lesson. Protect it. Because the principles that build success often matter far more than the success itself. Yet, there is another lesson even more important. A lesson that determines whether wealth becomes temporary or lasting. Most people think wealth is created by earning. In reality, wealth is often created by keeping. And understanding that difference changes everything. Because the next chapter is not about making money. It is about preventing money from quietly slipping away. And that lesson has transformed more financial futures than almost any investment strategy ever could. Chapter 8. The wealth you never see. A person can earn a fortune and still remain financially fragile. A person can earn an ordinary income and quietly build extraordinary security. That truth surprises many people because society trains us to focus on income. But income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what stays. And the difference between those two ideas can determine the direction of an entire life. Imagine two people earning the same amount of money. One spends nearly everything that arrives. The other consistently preserves a portion, year after year, month after month, decision after decision. From the outside, they may appear similar, but beneath the surface, their futures are moving in completely different directions. One is consuming. The other is building. The gap begins invisibly. Then one day, it becomes impossible to ignore. This is one of the reasons wealth often appears mysterious. People see outcomes. They rarely see habits. They see the house, not the discipline. They see the investment portfolio, not the years of restraint. They see the freedom, not the countless decisions that created it. The truth is that financial freedom is rarely one giant event. It is usually the result of thousands of small choices repeated consistently. A choice to save, a choice to learn, a choice to invest, a choice to delay gratification, a choice to think long-term. Most people underestimate the power of these decisions because each one feels insignificant. But insignificant actions repeated long enough become significant outcomes. There was a man who earned more money than he ever imagined possible. For years, increasing income seemed like the solution to everything. If he could just earn more, life would improve. If he could just reach the next level, everything would become easier. And eventually, he reached that level. Then another, then another. Yet something strange happened. The feeling of security never arrived. Each increase in income created a matching increase in spending. The bigger apartment, the newer car, the more expensive lifestyle, the additional obligations. His earnings expanded. His freedom did not. One evening, he looked at the numbers and realized something shocking. He had spent years increasing his income while neglecting his wealth. He was earning more than ever, yet he remained dependent on continuing to earn at that same pace. If the income stopped, the lifestyle would collapse. That realization changed his thinking forever, because he finally understood that wealth is not measured by how much money passes through your hands. It is measured by how long you can remain financially secure without needing more. That perspective transforms financial decisions. Suddenly, money becomes less about appearance and more about options, less about impressing, more about protecting, less about consumption, more about creation. One of the greatest financial advantages you can ever develop is the ability to separate wants from needs. Not because wanting things is wrong, because clarity creates power. A person who confuses every desire with a necessity becomes easy to manipulate. Advertisers know this. Marketers know this. Entire industries understand that emotional spending is profitable. That is why they often sell feelings more than products. Status, belonging, recognition, validation, identity. The object itself is frequently secondary. What people are really purchasing is a story, and stories can be expensive. This does not mean you should never enjoy money. Quite the opposite. Money should improve life. The goal is not deprivation. The goal is intentionality. The ability to spend consciously rather than compulsively. The ability to choose rather than react. The ability to align spending with values rather than emotions. Because every dollar carries a question. Will you consume this, or will you deploy it? Consumers think primarily about what money can buy today. Builders think about what money can create tomorrow. That distinction seems small. Its consequences are enormous. A dollar spent disappears. A dollar invested has the potential to multiply, not always immediately, not always dramatically, but consistently over time. This is where many people become impatient. They want visible progress now. Yet wealth rarely announces itself in the beginning. The early stages look boring, ordinary, unremarkable. A few dollars saved, a few investments made, a few habits established. Nothing exciting, nothing glamorous. But wealth does not care about excitement. Wealth responds to consistency. Imagine rolling a snowball down a hill. At first it barely changes. The growth feels insignificant. Then gradually more snow attaches. Momentum increases. The snowball becomes larger, heavier, faster. Eventually, its growth appears dramatic. The same principle applies to money. Compounding rewards patience. Patience rewards discipline. Discipline rewards vision. Most people understand this intellectually. Few practice it emotionally, because emotionally, waiting is difficult. Human beings naturally prefer immediate rewards. That preference explains many financial struggles. The future competes against the present every day, and the present usually feels louder. The vacation today, the purchase today, the comfort today, the pleasure today. Meanwhile, the future remains silent. Yet every future is built by today's decisions. This is why wealthy thinking often appears boring, because it prioritizes long-term outcomes over short-term impulses, not always, not obsessively, but consistently. One of the most valuable habits you can develop is asking a simple question before major purchases. Am I buying this because it improves my life or because it improves my image? That question has saved countless people from expensive mistakes. Image requires constant maintenance. Reality creates lasting value, and value always wins, eventually. Another important lesson about wealth is this: financial security is emotional security, not complete emotional security. Money cannot solve every problem, but it can reduce unnecessary stress. It can create breathing room. It can create options. It can create resilience. A person with savings experiences challenges differently than someone living on the edge. Unexpected expenses feel different. Economic uncertainty feels different. Opportunities feel different because financial margin creates flexibility, and flexibility creates confidence. Confidence creates better decisions. The cycle continues. One reason wealthy individuals often appear calmer is not because they have fewer problems. It is because they have more options. Options change psychology. The ability to say no, the ability to wait, the ability to choose, the ability to adapt. These are powerful advantages, and they are often created quietly through years of disciplined financial behavior. Not luck, not miracles, not secret tricks. Disciplined decisions repeated over time. If this lesson resonates with you, consider writing down one financial habit that would significantly improve your future if practiced consistently for the next 5 years. Just one, not 10. One. Because transformation rarely requires complexity. It requires commitment. The one rule continues to reveal itself in different forms. Become more valuable. Protect what you build. Allow it to compound and continue growing. Yet there is another force that dramatically accelerates wealth. A force more powerful than effort alone. More powerful than knowledge alone. More powerful than even money itself. Relationships, because no one builds anything meaningful entirely alone, and the quality of the people around you often determines the quality of the future ahead of you. That lesson may be one of the most important in this entire audiobook, and it is where our journey continues next. Please like and subscribe if you want a better future for your children, your family, and yourself. It's very difficult to achieve success today, but I'm sure you'll succeed. All you have to do is learn and discover new things. Chapter 9. The Rooms That Shape Your Future. Your future is hiding inside the conversations you're having today, not in some distant place, not in some mysterious opportunity, not in a secret strategy available only to a privileged few. It is hiding in the people you spend time with, the ideas you absorb, the standards you accept, the expectations that surround you. Because human beings are constantly influenced by their environment, whether they realize it or not. A seed planted in fertile soil grows differently than a seed planted in barren ground. Potential matters. Environment matters too. And one of the most overlooked truths about wealth is that success is often social before it becomes financial. Many people spend years trying to improve their income while remaining surrounded by influences that quietly discourage growth. Not intentionally, not maliciously, simply habitually. The people around them may genuinely care about them, yet care and growth are not always the same thing. Sometimes the people who love you most are also the people most uncomfortable with your transformation, because your growth forces them to confront their own choices, and that can create tension. There was a young woman who wanted to start a business, Every time she mentioned her ideas, the response was predictable. Be careful. That sounds risky. Are you sure? Maybe later. Maybe when things are more stable. Maybe when conditions are perfect. The advice sounded reasonable, responsible even, yet something felt wrong. Years passed, the advice never changed, neither did her life. Then she attended a small event filled with entrepreneurs. For the first time, she heard different conversations. People discussed possibilities instead of limitations, solutions instead of obstacles, experiments instead of excuses. Failure was treated as feedback rather than catastrophe. The experience shocked her, not because she suddenly learned a secret, because she entered a different environment, and environments influence expectations. The same idea that seemed impossible in one room appeared completely achievable in another. That realization changed her trajectory, not overnight, but permanently. Because once you see a larger possibility, it becomes difficult to return to a smaller vision. This is why relationships matter so much. Not because successful people possess magical powers. Because people influence thinking. Thinking influences decisions. Decisions influence outcomes. The chain is always operating. Every conversation leaves traces. Every environment shapes perception. Every relationship affects perspective. Consider two different groups. In one group, every conversation revolves around problems, complaints, limitations, blame, scarcity, the belief that life happens to people. In the other group, conversations revolve around learning, improvement, ideas, solutions, responsibility, possibility. The belief that life can be influenced through action. Now imagine spending 5 years in each environment. Do you think the outcomes would be identical? Of course not. Because environments become invisible teachers. They shape expectations without announcing themselves. One of the most important financial lessons you can learn is this: protect your proximity. Be intentional about who has access to your mind, not because you should become arrogant, not because you should judge people, because your attention is valuable, your mindset is valuable, your future is valuable, and not every influence deserves equal access. The people around you do not determine your destiny, but they often influence your direction. Direction eventually becomes destiny. Years ago, a mentor shared a simple observation. He said that every room asks a question. Some rooms ask, how can we avoid risk? Other rooms ask, how can we create opportunity? Some rooms ask, why is this impossible? Other rooms ask, how could this become possible? The questions being asked often matter more than the answers, because questions direct thinking, and thinking directs action. One of the fastest ways to expand your future is to spend time around people whose standards exceed your own, not to imitate them blindly, to learn from them. Observe how they think. Observe what they prioritize. Observe how they solve problems. Observe how they respond to setbacks. Success leaves clues, not formulas. Clues. And clues can shorten learning curves dramatically. The right conversation can save years. One insight can prevent countless mistakes. One mentor can change the trajectory of an entire life. That is why networking is often misunderstood. Many people approach relationships transactionally. What can I get? Who can help me? Who has something I need? The most valuable relationships rarely grow that way. They grow through contribution, curiosity, respect, service, genuine interest. The best opportunities often emerge from trust, and trust cannot be rushed. Trust is earned. one interaction at a time, one promise kept at a time, one demonstration of character at a time. This is another reason why becoming valuable remains the foundation of everything. People naturally seek relationships with individuals who create value, who solve problems, who keep their word, who contribute meaningfully, who elevate the people around them. Value attracts opportunities because value attracts people, and people create possibilities. Think about your own life. Many of the most important moments probably involved another person, a teacher, a friend, a mentor, a colleague, a partner, a conversation, a recommendation, an introduction. Human beings are connected through networks of influence. The stronger those networks become, the more possibilities emerge. Now, there is an important warning here. Not every relationship should be maintained forever. Growth sometimes changes compatibility. A friendship built around old habits may struggle when new goals appear. A social circle built around comfort may resist ambition. A community built around limitation may challenge expansion. This does not make anyone bad. It simply reflects reality. As you grow, some relationships deepen, others drift. That process can feel painful, but it is often natural. The goal is not to abandon people. The goal is to continue becoming the person you are meant to become. Growth requires honesty, and honesty sometimes reveals that certain environments no longer support your future. Thank you for watching. Wish you all the best.